No joke. I don't know who ever spoke saying you can have our kids, but they are fired. We have rights that we stand on. Time for CPS to be gone. Their services are no longer wanted. There is no reason for our kids to be taunted. Stay away, EPS. You have no Constitution came from a revolution, defending the family as the foundation of our freedom. It gives us the way to beat them, so be aware, don't tread on me. I am the Punisher and follow my warning. I have the posse with me, so get to conforming. I'm fight, he's not backing down while they try and steal his freedom. So challenge his will and feel his wrath. Bird is watching every move, making sure Pierce doesn't screw the pooch. He knows the laws and enforces them. CPS, watch out, get off the porch, you can't come in. Danielle is fired up, looking for action. She hates CPS with a great passion. She'll fight all night if it needs be. Fighting APS is where she should be. Gunner is fierce with his knowledge, pretty good for a guy with no college. He was quiet until they ruffled his feathers. Now he's pissed and won't stop until it's over. We all have come together to fight this enemy. Together we will win for you and me. Our kids will come home. Let the truth be known. He paps, you never had authority. This is more than important to me. Return our kids home. We don't deserve to be alone. We are all EPS punishers. Throughout the world our voices heard. We stand with a message CPS needs to learn. Fuck around and find out.
Ooh, Merry Christmas, everybody. All right. Thank you very much. Welcome to a special edition of Christmas edition of CPS Victims on Injustice. I am your host, the CPS Punisher, and we got quite a little audience, and not a little audience, I guess. I'm excited about our guest tonight. It's unexpected. I just saw her up on Messenger and pulled her in, so I'm so excited that she's here. So let's bring them out. We got Vinny obviously with us, but we got Miss Kim Page with us also tonight. Kim, how are you?
Good. How are y'all?
Kim has got to be single-handedly the most aggressive, knowledgeable woman I've ever met that fights CPS. She's a freaking bear. She knows everything about everything and then some. Actually, I'm pretty sure that there's some things that she doesn't. There's nothing that you don't know, Kim. Is that clear? Is that safe to say?
Okay. I appreciate that, but I will call you bullshit on it.
Well, I'm just saying,
I'm
there's not many.
knowledgeable about quite a few things, but I definitely still have a lot to learn.
We were on the show earlier today, and I came in late, and we were talking, and we started a conversation about where does CPS draw their authority from? Like, what? Not meaning like the cops or this. Where is it that our Congress has passed a law that said that these people are allowed to draw authority? I mean, I know there's parents patriae that tells us that if your kids are in, danger or whatever, then the state's allowed to step in. But where is the authority that these CPS people, where do they draw it from? Who are these people?
Well, I think the thing that we've got to remember is that CPS is a civil thing. It's not a criminal thing. And our Constitution was not designed with civil action in mind. So because this country was founded in such a way that the federal government only has authority over the states in certain things, the states are the ones that have to make rules where the federal government can't. So those rules come from the state itself, and the federal government has no authority over it because our Constitution never gave them the authority. That's why we have to ask a constitutional question and say, hey, does the federal government not think that they should have the authority over these things? So when we look at a situation and we go, well, the Constitution doesn't allow this, it's because it's not something that our forefathers ever considered having to allow. I mean, do you think George Washington thought that people were going to beat their kids or, traffic their children. They didn't think that. Nobody that created the Constitution ever thought anything like this would happen. So they didn't put any provisions in there to protect us from these things. They also didn't think things like Columbine or 9/11, any of those things would have happened. So we had no idea how to respond to those things until those things became a national emergency.
Right.
So
what they did do though,
this,
but they did say, look, the only way that you can do these things though is to have your Congress has to vote on it. I mean, it does say that, right?
well, yes, but when it was designed in mind with criminal action in mind, not civil action, not me versus you. It's always been the government versus us, where the government punishes us. You murder somebody, it's the state of versus the
Right.
accused. So, because the Constitution of the United States did not address things in a civil perspective, it's left up to the states to decide what needs to be done. That's why each state has its own constitution. The Constitution of each state is almost verbatim of the United States Constitution. However, because of law and legislative acts, other things have been added to that Constitution, which are now laws within that state. Alabama, where I'm from, actually has the longest constitution in the world. So what happens is the legislator of that state decides that Child Protective Services has the right to investigate, not just a right, but a duty to investigate any accusation made against another person. And because hearsay is allowed in civil cases, all it takes is hearsay to be a valid accusation, because we're going off of the rules and laws of civil court, not criminal court. In criminal court, I can't say I saw Bob shoot John. And then John looked at me, and then John looked at me and said, "You didn't see this." I can't say what John says. I can go in and say I saw it, but I can't say then John said this. That's hearsay.
Right.
In civil court, there is a very, very, very small burden of proof, which means it's a preponderance of evidence. It's who has more evidence. If I have 50 pieces of evidence and you have 49, I win. Even if my evidence is bullshit, I have more evidence. So because it's a different weight on how the Constitution was laid out, we can't use the Constitution as our protection until we have a decision made that the Constitution has that authority. And so far, the decisions that have been made by the Supreme Court have said that the Constitution does not have that authority. So we have to leave it up to the states. Now, after your earlier show, I started thinking, there was a lady in the background, and she was talking about orphans, and people would go to war and they would die, or Great Depression, whatever, and they would leave children here that somebody needed to take care of. And she said something about courts weren't needed then to do all that. One of my comments, I don't know if y'all read it, was because back then children were not considered property. So parents' rights did not have to be terminated. So I think what we need to do is we need to look back and figure out when children became property, according to the federal government. If we can figure that out, I think we can figure out how to stop them from terminating our rights. Because you don't own a person, you own property. So how do I have rights to my children unless they're property?
Right, you're terminating the ownership of them, is what they're saying. They're terminating your rights to them. Correct.
Exactly. So we need to figure out exactly when the federal government decided that children were property. I think if we can do that, we can blow up on CPS's whole ability to function. because they function on terminating rights. That's their whole basis for existing, is to stop you from being the legal parent of your child.
Right, and to accept the responsibility of that other child so that they can get their funding. Right. So that's the task at hand, and that's where we find out. Because I know a lot of places, if you try to say that's their property, like Rick used to say, a lot of places you're getting in trouble for trying to say that they're your property.
Right, but if you can go in and you can prove that the federal government considers them property, then there's that whole, most people that say that are people that are, the sovereign law people. I can't drive without a license.
Yeah.
And while every bit of that's true, the application of it is a huge problem with that. But if we are being told that our rights are being terminated, that means that stuff about being the property is true. If we can find the actual statute or the case law that actually defines that.
Because what are my rights?
Yeah.
Well, according to what I just found, and I was looking it up, it says it dates back that kids back in colony days were considered the property of their father. So we're talking 1800. So like 1867 and 19th century. It dates back to that.
Okay, so if it dates back to pre-Constitution, then we have to find where, since the Constitution was written, do we have that?
That's a good point right there. I mean, that is something that we're going to have to really dig into. Darren, I'm in on that. I can help dig in on that because you know what? I got all the fucking time in the world right now.
So as late as 1920 in Ohio, for instance, parents could place their children in indentured servitude without legal repercussion. An issue our child protection system today would definitely not turn a blind eye to. So this is where this is. So they're saying 1974, just 7 years before the start of Pro Kids, the federal government passed the Child Abuse Prevention Act, which supplied to the states federal funding and standards to prevent, identify, and treat child abuse and neglect. But you're right, Kim. What are our rights, right? What are the rights that they're terminating? What are they? Have we ever, we just say they're terminating our parental rights? Okay, well, what are our parental rights? Where do we find them?
Exactly. So I think that what we need to do at this point is we need to start looking for something that calls our children property, that was written, that was established after the Constitution. And then once we get that found, we need to get a constitutional question written. And we need to submit it as a group of parents together to the Supreme Court of the United States and get them to answer that question. So if they're willing to answer that question and they issue something that says children cannot be property, then that means that any parent whose rights were terminated, automatically we can go get our kids and there's nothing anybody can do. Because the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional to terminate rights, because you can't terminate rights to something that you cannot own.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like what my wife just said, it's like saying you bought your child when you really didn't.
But okay, so let's just go on that point. So, in order to make a purchase, you have to have a contract, whether it's a written contract or a verbal contract, right?
Right.
Well, one of the things that you have to have, and this is why safety plans are very much able to be broken, is because in a contract, you have to have consideration. Consideration is, I give you $10, you give me a brush.
Right.
I have to get something, you have to get something. That is consideration. I will give you $1,000 to paint my bedroom. You get $1,000, I get a painted bedroom. So whether it's a service or actually a physical transfer of items, something has to give on both sides. With the safety plan, you're giving your kids, they're giving nothing. That's why a safety plan is legally able to be discontinued at any time. So with the part with our children, how do we own our children? Well, how could we have contracted to have purchased our children? We didn't give anybody anything. There was no consideration. We got our children, but what did we give for them?
Nothing.
The birth certificate.
Yeah, we have to pay for everything else.
The birth certificate. Because we signed that birth certificate. If you go into the very, very, very fine print of the document that you signed in the hospital, when that birth certificate was applied for, that's where it's at. We are giving the state, they are giving us permission to raise the child, and we're giving them the rights to take the child from us. It's because of the birth certificate. That's where that contract lies.
That's hiding beneath our eyes without us even realizing it when we're signing this shit. And that's highly against the law.
Well, can't that be void? I mean, can't that be void? I mean, if you didn't realize that's what you're signing, or is there someone that's, I don't remember, to be honest. So is there someone that's there present saying that, do you understand what you're signing here? When you do
No,
that
you're signing saying you understand it and you agree to it. So if you go and get a credit card at 19 years old and you have no clue what the hell you're doing, and you sign that credit card saying you're going to pay 112% interest, then you get your first bill, you've only spent $50, and now you've got to pay you've got to pay $150.
Yep.
Well, I didn't know it said that. Are you still legally required to pay that $150 because you didn't read it and see it?
I've always seen that because you're under like women are under hospital care. They might be under medication. They might be having sort of things like that, looking for a way out of that contract, if anything.
Okay. Well, were you high or under any kind of medication when your wife gave birth? You were sober. Yeah, you were. Well, okay. Darren doesn't count. You in general.
Yeah.
You in general as the man. How many men are under the influence at the hospital when their wife's giving birth?
Sure.
Majority of them are not.
Right, they
signed it.
Right.
No, but after the birth I was.
Either way, regardless. But is there's 100% truth to that's where that's given is in the birth certificate is where we do?
That's where we give them that's where we give them the right. And the problem is so much of our law is based in Latin, and most people don't know how to read Latin. Some of it, it's self-explanatory because it sounds English, but that's like what, 1%? So if some of this document is put in Latin verbiage, you're not going to know what it means, even if you did read through the document.
Right.
And you're going to be signing it because we've been led to believe that you can't take your child home until a birth certificate has been filled out. But that's not true.
The only way to kidnap our children.
Exactly. The only thing that a birth certificate is required for is to be able to obtain a Social Security card.
Whoa. Wow. So check this out. In Maine, an unmarried biological father is not considered a legal parent unless paternity is established through legal action.
And when there are not two parents, legal parents, the state, in almost every state, assumes that spot. That's why single mothers, are eligible for TANF and welfare and other things that they say, well, if you're able to find your baby daddy, we're going after him to make him pay it back. They're eligible for those things because the state technically is baby daddy. And the screw you get from them ain't nowhere near as good as it is DNA baby daddy.
Yeah, don't I know about that? I'm getting screwed by them big time.
So wait a minute. If you're not the biological father until you're legally challenged in the state. For instance, I was never legally challenged to be Nina's father.
Well, it depends on the state. What state are you in again?
Yeah, that's in Maine. So this is in Maine. If you're not legal, so how can they? I'm seeing some gray areas here.
The mother signed the document. The mother signed the birth certificate, and in Maine, that birth certificate has to say something about giving the state the position of fatherhood until it is legally established that the DNA provider is the father. There has to be something in that contract she's signing when she signs for that birth certificate.
And then it says, all right, so it says both parents signing a voluntary AOP, acknowledgement of paternity, or a district court order declaring a man the legal father of a child. All right. So, anyway, that's just something else for further down the road. But
Yeah.
you're saying
And I bet you money that none of the legislators in that state have a clue about that law.
That says that they're not, because what I'm getting at is, okay, how does DHS have the right to come and sever my rights as a parent if I'm not even legally her parent? Unless we voluntarily have done this AOP.
Well,
I'm not even her father at this point.
That would actually be a good question. I mean, would actually that would actually call into subject matter jurisdiction of the family court, because if you're not the father, then that wouldn't be a court that they have subject matter authority to hear.
Right. Yep. We're
gonna have to do some more research on that one.
Yeah, I guess the thing is finding out where that whatever that AOP is. When is that signed? I would think that a parent would sign that somewhere.
You'd have to sign that while you're in the hospital or before the baby is born. Because, like I said, the only thing a birth certificate is actually technically used for is to obtain a Social Security card. Without a birth certificate, you can't get a Social Security card. So they make parents, fill out the birth certificate so that you can get the Social Security card, because they think that that's a requirement in order to have your child.
When it really absolutely is
not. There was actually a case. Terry LaPointe wrote a story. I want to say it was on medicalkidnap.com. I think it was Alabama. There was a couple that gave birth. This is about 4 years ago. The couple had the child, and they left the hospital without a birth certificate.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the state took the child and got the child a birth certificate. So that would be one where, because the state came in, that was actually a kidnapping in the highest sense, because they had never contracted with the state government to allow them to have any kind of authority over their child.
Yeah,
so when they actually went and signed that birth certificate, that was the state contracting with itself on behalf of the parent. Well, that whole case, there's no subject matter jurisdiction there, because the state can't do business with itself. The state can't sue itself. The state can't sue another state unless they're in federal court. So they have no subject matter jurisdiction in that court. But these parents didn't know this. What did these parents do? They went to a traditional attorney. And a traditional attorney said, well, you got to fight CPS. You're going to have to, you know, agree to get a birth certificate. You're going to have to agree to get a social security card. And that was literally kidnapping for ransom.
Yeah, her book is Voices That Will Not Be Silenced.
Yeah, the voices. I don't think Voices Will Not Be Silenced. I don't think that story's in there. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's not. But she used to write for a online news magazine called medicalkidnap.com. And I'm fairly certain it's on there. If it's not, it's going to be on realnewsspark.com, which is her own site.
Real News Spark, you said?
realnewsspark.com, yes.
Let's see here. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, there's got to be. See, you know how I've always been a fan of the. Extend your links. You know, I've always been pounding on this void ab initio thing. You know, I've been on that for a long time, and I'm getting closer to making that. So, I'm very close to that. But you see that they're closing the gap on that too. Like they keep trying to come up with new things that are meaning void ab initio, even though they're not void ab initio. They're trying to say no, it's void order, or it's void this, or it's this. And no, it's not. It's void ab initio, void from the start. It's meant for this. It's even meant to use against government agencies. That's what I've learned so far now. So, I mean, we're getting close to that being that it's just finding this piece. This is a piece that we were just talking about tonight. And with you just saying that it's the birth certificate and now looking into it at this point, because I'm like, where is the contract? Where is it that we give these people authority to take our kids? And you're saying it's in the birth certificate. Us signing that birth certificate contracts automatically to say that if we have, but here's the other thing. Where is it that the legislation says that they can do this? Because we also need to make sure that Congress and our Senate, not meaning the big Congress and Senate, but the little Congress and Senate that we have in each state, have said and given them the authority to do such things. Because there's that we need to check into as well. Because they can't just walk around underneath the guidelines of, oh, we can do this because your kids are hurt or whatever. They can't just do that. There's no way.
So that would end up having to fall under contract law. So,
right.
And you know, honestly, all the issues with CPS, I think the biggest problem that we have is we're trying to think too broadly.
Right.
We need to start looking very basic.
Yeah.
So where does that give them the authority? So the legislator, they would have to pass legislation that allows hospitals to contract the cell of a human being on their behalf.
Right.
So that means that whenever the hospital does that, the hospital is procuring the cell of a baby. That is trafficking. Any contract that is made that is repugnant to the law is void.
Right.
So the law says that you can't sell a child. Well, yes, correct. But it also says you can't sell a child. So if it says you can't sell a child and the state is contracting with these hospitals as third parties to facilitate the purchase of a child, even though no money is exchanging hands, what is exchanging hands? Rights. So, you know, we could look at going after the states for literal contract violations.
Right.
Because the contract was that we have our children and they have the legal right to access them. And then they took our kids away from us, which voided the contract.
Correct. And what voids the contract even more is that they removed our rights before said due process is done. Like they don't get to dictate what we do with our children before we go in front of that court and get the preponderance amount of evidence or whatever. You don't get to determine what we do with our kids until the gavel slams and says that your rights are terminated. You still are that parent. Period. Now they fall under these preliminary petition, the preliminary protection orders, and they do that. They find a way to get you under a restraining order. Essentially, is what they do, which is bullshit. But even restraining orders, after 10 days or whatever, you're supposed to be able to go back and refine whether or not that restraining order stands or sits. But they don't allow you to do that. They just automatically tell you that now that you're in this contract, now every 6 months will be up for review. So look up your rights under a restraining order and look up the rules for that. After 10 days, you go back and revisit that. Make sure that form of punishment fits the crime. Because, it might have just been something that, that's not going to warrant that or whatever. Because those things leave a lasting footprint on your stuff.
But that's not the way that's not the way all states work.
But they all start with a preliminary protection order.
Yes, they do. But so, I recently had to take a restraining order out, and in their court, the way they do it is I file for a restraining order. I describe the situation, and because hearsay is allowed in civil court, I file a restraining order, and I tell the judge I need it. The judge listens to my story, listens to whatever statements I include with it, and ends up determining, yes, okay, based on this information I'm given, there is reason for a restraining order to be issued. The restraining order is issued, and the person who the restraining order is against has the right to appeal this and decide whether or not to go to court and argue their point. If they decide not to appeal it, then it stands for the 1 year to 5 years that the judge puts down.
Right.
So with this particular state, it ends up being that there is no preliminary hearing. It's my word against yours. If I feel threatened enough to need it, then the judge will issue it, and you have to prove that I wasn't threatened at all in order to get it removed.
Now, see, on the flip side of that, instead of going before a judge, I've learned that you can go and download the cease and desist harassment order, okay? It does not have to be signed by a judge. You can have it either signed by a notary or not. You don't have to. But you can serve this order on these people, and they are forced to cease and desist. If they do not, then a lawsuit can commence upon them.
That's not an order. What a cease and desist is, and I use these all the time to keep CPS out of parents' lives. A cease and desist is a notice letting an adversary know that if you do not cease and desist, if you do not stop immediately the things that you are doing that I don't want you to do or you're not supposed to do, I will take legal action against you. It has no weight at all in court except to show that you already asked them to stop. They cannot have the police cannot do anything with it. No judge can do anything with it except use it as evidence that you've asked them to stop. But it has no legal authority behind it at all. It is just a legal leave me alone.
But you can also move forward with your own, like you say, I'm going to bring you to court if you don't. I mean, you can move forward with your own threat, your own game with it.
Yes.
If those avenues are existing. You say, well,
yes, and then that's when you would,
whatever.
And that's when you would get an order. An order can only come down from a judicial authority. Meaning a judge. Only a judge.
Okay. I wouldn't trust any of these judges because they're really not judges. They're all notary of the public.
Well, no. The ones that are elected in are. There are some that are actually hired in, usually like municipal court judges. But the ones that are elected in, yes, they are all notary publics.
I found that mine wasn't. He was the one was elected in. but he was elected in by a corrupt senator.
Hmm.
What was that, Benny?
Yep.
He was hired in by a corrupt senator.
He was appointed.
Hired, appointed. He was brought in by Governor LePage back when the corruption started in Maine.
Well, why is it that everybody says that there's no judges? Why does it say there's been no legal judges since 1798 or whatever that year is? What is behind?
Because this, the 16th Amendment of the Constitution, they said that there's a part of it that has not been seen in a while, and that this amendment, it says that no attorneys are allowed to run for public office. So in order for you to become a judge, you have to run for office.
Right.
So the 16th Amendment says that since they're not allowed to, then their win is not legal. But the way that the states get around that is the Bar Association gives them a conditional bar license, meaning that they are temporarily suspended as an attorney. But as soon as they are legally able to resume being an attorney, it will automatically be reinstated as valid. That's how they get around that.
Wow.
Look it up. Look it up on the bar. Find an attorney that you know is an active attorney, and then find a judge on your state bar website, and look at the difference in the type of licensing they have.
That's corrupt as shit.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's treason of the highest.
Debbie, who said you can't say CPS is threatening you? I mean, if CPS told you that, then CPS actually has as much authority as the manager of Walmart. Until you give him an authority over you, he has no authority over you. The reason CPS has authority over your children is because you gave it to them.
I gotta agree with you. Right.
When you say you gave it to them, could you please explain to me what you mean by you gave them the authority over your children?
Yeah, Herbert, we actually talked about this before you jumped on. So we were talking about we were continuing the conversation that they were having earlier about who gave the authority, and basically it boils down to when you sign your child's birth certificate, there is verbiage in there that you're giving the state the right to be the third parent. And
okay, so at that point you gave CPS the authority.
No, you did. Well, so what happened is because CPS is contracted by the states to act as their representative, and you gave the state third-party parental relation of your child, CPS is acting on the third parent's behalf. That's where they get that authority.
I see.
Yeah.
And by the way, I wanted to mention while you were talking about the birth certificates, do you know you can't even obtain a passport unless you have a birth certificate as an adult?
Right. Which means we're not allowed to leave our country unless we have some sort of identification. Which means if we're not allowed to leave and go somewhere else, that means we're being held hostage by our own government.
Right. That's correct. Because even if you leave the country via somebody's private plane, once you get to port of entry into France or Italy or another country, they want to see your passport.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to say, well, I don't have a passport. They're not going to let you in. you can't get a passport unless you can show your birth certificate in the United States.
Yep. And who's
So with that,
who was the one that
with that
actually
said,
put into effect a passport? Whose grand idea was it? I would be willing to bet that not the Who.
Yeah.
What is it? The other one.
The why?
No. The big world order folks. Not the Who, not the World Health Organization, the other one.
something out of the UN?
United Nations.
United Nations?
Yes, I would be willing to bet that passports were the idea of the United Nations.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it would only make sense.
I could definitely see that.
It would only make sense that they're the ones that, told all the rest of the countries to start using this.
Yep. No birth certificate, no passport. No passport, you can't leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost behooves you to get your birth certificate when you at birth. There's no way around it, because if you don't get it, you're not going anywhere.
You know what? Well, that's actually a good point. How do the Amish travel?
They stay right here.
Yeah.
They don't go anywhere.
They do, but there's a lot of them in Minnesota and Wisconsin that are right up there along the Canadian border, and it's actually better. It's actually a shorter distance for them to travel to a grocery store in Canada than it is in the United States. How do they get to go to the grocery store?
There was a time. Well, let me address that. There was a time when, as long as you have a United States driver's license and you want to go to Canada, you can go across the border.
But Amish don't
But
have
now they
driver's
stopped that after 9/11.
Amish
Oh,
Amish
the
don't have driver's
Mennonites.
license. They don't have birth certificates. They
But
don't
the
have security cards.
Mennonites.
They don't have any of that.
But the Mennonites, is it called Mennonites?
Mennonites.
They're a derivative of, yes.
Yeah, it's a derivative of it.
Yes, they're a derivative. So they can go across the border. But the actual Amish who don't have a driver's license, they can't go across the border.
But who has the authority to tell them they can't? The authority for Canada to tell United States citizens that we can't come in without a passport. Who was that? Who granted that to Canada? And who granted that to the United States? Likely the United Nations.
Well, going into Canada, Canada is saying, when you go across the border, they're the ones that's going to ask you for identification.
Right. But in order for Canada to ask citizens of the United States for identification, the United States had to make an agreement with Canada to say, you have the right to ask that of our citizens, and vice versa.
That falls back on the United Nations.
But
that goes back to the United Nations.
Who gave Canada the authority to make that deal with the United States?
Must be some joint commission agreement.
Like the United Nations.
And that goes back to...
But here's
United
the thing.
Nations. It goes back to the United Nations.
But here's the thing. In order for the United States and Canada to make that agreement, we had to tell them it was okay to make that agreement on our behalf.
Right.
We did that when we signed our driver's license. Okay. So we contracted with the United States, the corporation that is the United States, to allow them to be our power of attorney, so to speak. We did that when we signed the Social Security card. We did that for the federal government. We did that with the states when we got our driver's license. But the Amish have never contracted with the United States. They have no birth certificates. They have no Social Security cards. They have no driver's license. Who has the authority over them to require a passport to go into another country?
Has to be the United Nations. the Joint Commission of People in the United Nations. They all got together and agreed to that.
Okay, so
However, here's one for you. If you go to Mexico, you need nothing.
Yeah.
You're not coming back out of Mexico unless you have something.
right,
But if you want to go to Mexico, you could go right across the border with nothing whatsoever. Go right into Mexico. But if you don't have a passport or a driver's license or something, you're not coming back into the States.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it'd be that bad though right now, because this country's shit. Might as well go on down there. Beat all the illegals over here being deported back there, so we can take over their spots and they can have a reason to come back over here. Flip the script on them.
Yeah, but you could just drive. A lot of people don't know it. You could just drive across the Mexican border, which is only 2 hours away from where I live, and just drive across the Mexican border, and nobody asks you a word. But when you come back in, you better show identification, or you're not coming back into the United States.
That's kind of a good point there, Crash. Look up and obtain a delayed birth certificate in the U.S. I wonder what that says. Actually, I wanna look that up.
What's your name? In the Amish that's put by CPS. That happened?
But Darren, we can barely hear you, buddy.
Oh. So, can the Amish be messed with by CPS?
No, not. Never. I've never heard of a single case where the Amish had their children taken. Even in cases where both Amish parents are killed or die,
yeah,
the CPS can't step in then either. They have to leave it to the village, leave it to the community.
So,
I also haven't heard of any children taken away from the Hasidic Jews. Not just any Jewish person. I'm talking specifically the Hasidic Jews. I've never heard of a child being taken away from them.
So I wanna read this to you guys, because he did raise a valid point. A delayed birth certificate in the U.S. So, a delayed birth certificate may be marked delayed, printed on a specific delay birth certificate form, and shows a late filing date. Delayed birth certificates can be used for a variety of purposes, including obtaining a passport, establishing citizenship, and genealogical research.
Okay. A birth certificate is used to establish citizenship.
Yep.
So if you have no established citizenship, Child Protective Services can't mess with you.
Right.
There's that contract you contracted with the government. There's your contract. You signing you getting a birth certificate means that you're a citizen. You contract with the government. And that contract
So
gives
with that
the
said,
authority.
okay, so with that said, if a couple came over here from France and they're citizens of France, and they have some issues going on in the United States with their children or whatever, and people are calling because, you know, the nosy neighbors are saying the baby's crying and blah, 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 and they call CPS. CPS can't intervene with the French citizens.
Nope.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Technically, yes.
Yeah, that's
Technically, yes.
interesting.
So unless you're a
Except
citizen of the
for-
United States.
That's interesting.
Except for there is a treaty between the United States and France. You've heard of no extradition?
Yep.
Well,
Yes.
when you have countries with no extradition with the United States, it's because they don't have a treaty with the United States. In the treaty, that the United States and another country has, it basically says we are going to be allowed to prosecute your citizens in the same way we're allowed to prosecute ours if your citizens come into our home. And the other country says, yes, we agree to that. That's why a couple of years ago there was a girl in Italy that was charged with murdering her roommate. Meredith something, I think was her name. Do y'all remember that one?
Yep.
Well, the reason everybody kept saying United States, go rescue our person, they couldn't. They couldn't because the United States has a treaty with Italy saying that that's illegal. I mean, saying that is legal, that it is legal for them to prosecute her as if she is one of their citizens. That's why this guy that just set this chick on fire in New York on the subway, he's not a United States citizen. He's a Mexican citizen. That's why we are able to prosecute him instead of us having to send him back to Mexico for prosecution, because we have a treaty with those countries that say, yes, you can punish mine, I will punish yours.
Gotcha.
So, if you had somebody come over from, I don't know if it's true on this one, but we all know that Brazil is supposed to be one of the non-extradition ones. So let's say somebody come over from Brazil and they don't have a treaty with the United States. Number one, likely they're going to have a lot of people watching them, from the State Department, because these people, we don't have a treaty with them and they could be a spy, whatever. But if Child Protective Services came in and got their children, Brazil would immediately do what they had to do to get them back, because we didn't make an agreement with them saying that we're allowed to punish them as we would punish our own. Brazil said, fuck that shit.
Gotcha.
And Brazil said, no, we'll deal with our citizens.
So whatever countries are non-extraditable, pretty much in essence, are ones that we have contracts with, or do not have contracts with.
Yeah, I mean, they may have some, in essence, yeah, there may be some provisions, like with countries that we do import-export with, that we have certain rules that allow us to have a mini treaty or something, but for the most part, yeah, if there's no extradition, we don't fuck with them, they don't fuck with us.
Gotcha. So if I went to Brazil and met a young lady, we had a child in Brazil, that child is Brazilian now, am I correct?
Yes. That child would also that child will also be American as well. However, in order for that child to receive the protections of both countries, one country would likely require that child to denounce one citizenship. Brazil would
But the child was born in Brazil.
Yes, but because you are American, the child has dual citizenship.
Yeah, I've seen that done in UK, because I have a friend who had her kids here in the US, but because she was being deported back home to the UK, they made her sign a contract that stated that she could not bring the kids back across unless we had the okay.
Right. And that's why, like, let's say that I'm in the military and they ship me off to Uganda, and while I'm in Uganda, I have a baby. That baby has dual citizenship because the child was born in that country. But because I am that child's parent, my citizenship passes down. That's the whole thing, the anchor babies, where Mexicans come over here and have a baby so that they can, oh, I can't leave my child thing. That's what that is. It's an baby, basically an anchor baby.
Hey, let's see here. This is definitely a you, Kim. It says Crash Craft Lab says The U.S. is the only country with birthright citizenships, or so I've heard. Is this true?
Yep. So like if somebody comes over here from France and they were pregnant and they give birth to their child, just for example, because I've never looked at their laws, but I'm from France. I come over here, I give birth to my child. The United States would consider that child both French and a U.S. citizen, but France would not consider that child both French and U.S. citizen.
Wow.
So France would consider that child what?
That they would consider that child U.S. citizen because it's not passed down from parent to child. You have to be born there to be that citizen, or you have to apply for citizenship. So if I was French and I came to the United States and I gave birth, then I would have to apply for citizenship for my child in France for my child to be considered French. Or a French citizen.
Gotcha. Even though you and your husband are both French citizens, but you have the child in the United States, you have to apply to have your child to be considered a French citizen.
Yep, because birthrights are not handed down in those other. And United States is the only country that makes it happen.
I see.
So, I guess basically what we've learned here tonight is that the birth certificates are where all of this lies. This is where we got to start hammering away and finding out ways that we can start breaking these people. Like you said, finding out when the kids became property. Looking into a little bit more of like what does it actually mean when you sign a birth certificate, things in those areas, right? Like that's where we're trying to focus in on and see where we can break this thing wide open. Because there's got to be something that opens the egg and then we all get to get our yolks back. You know what I mean? Like there's got to be something that.
I would also check British law as well, because that's where our laws were derived from, and their verbiage may be something. There may be something in there that actually says that children are property, and if it did, and it kind of migrated over here, that thought process, how did it migrate over?
All right, that works for me. All right, guys, want to do some last thoughts?
I got a question. For last thoughts. So if parents decide to have a child at home, okay, home birth, and there's no birth certificate or anything, that child is persona non grata. It doesn't exist because there's no birth certificate. It was birthed at home.
Which is the Amish. Yes, that's exactly how the Amish work, though.
Well, that just says they're not Amish. They're just Americans in Ohio. They just want to have a child at home, and they don't take it to the hospital. Maybe at some point they're going to have to go for pediatric care. How are they going to justify that to the doctors? Because the doctors aren't they going to ask about birth certificate? Oh, that's where the Child Protective Service is. Yeah, they're going to jump in immediately.
And they can because mom and dad have a birth certificate. So here's the thing. At 18, the Social Security Administration sends you a document that allows you to knock all that shit out of play. But what happens is what 18-year-old pays any attention to that? And 9 times out of 10, you throw it away. And when they say you have XYZ amount of time to fill this out and get it back to us so that you can get rid of the birth certificate, get rid of the Social Security card and all that need for identification, they say if you don't return it within this certain amount of time, then you are basically consenting, implied consent. So when you're 18, if you don't sign everything away saying I'm not contracting with you because now I'm an adult and I legally have to be the one you contract with, you're allowing them to continue that authority over you that your parents gave them when your parents signed your birth certificate. So since you didn't throw out your birth certificate, throw out your Social Security card, when you gave birth to that child and you decided not to get them a birth certificate, CPS can come in and take that child because you gave them the authority to mess with you. And that child is part of you.
Therein lies the property.
I got you.
So they're throwing out all this BS of, this our children are property, but then they're wanting to split hairs with it and say, but they're not property. They are in some capacities, but not in others.
Right. Oh boy. Well,
I would like to see you come back on the show again. This is really good information.
we're going to rope Kim back in. We've missed Kim. She's been gone for a long time from us, but now we've got her back.
Well, I'm
Let's
here.
rope on her, Herbert. All right, let's do last words, guys. Herbert, Kim, you remember last words, right?
Yeah, my last words are: if police come to the door, CPS come to the door, they don't have a warrant, they don't have any paperwork that says they can come in, don't let them in. And by the way, don't talk to them. Why are you people talking to these people? If they don't have any right to come in, just say, have a nice day and close the door. There's nothing to discuss with them.
That's it. You got that right. Kim, you got some last words?
Stop contracting with CPS. I know that they're scary. I know they bring the police with their guns and they're we know more than you do. When you sign a safety plan, you are putting yourself in a very, very, very precarious situation. Stop contracting with these people. You tell them, I do not need your assistance. Thank you for your concern. Remove yourself from my property and slam the door. If they continue to bug you, you send them a cease and desist and let them know that if they continue to harass you or your family, that you're going to sue them in federal court for violations under color of law. Stop contracting with them. Stop it.
Touche.
Jenny, last word.
I'm gonna kind of follow along the same line here because I just want you parents to understand you have rights. You need to protect your rights and not let these assholes in your door.
Oh, we lost Jenny Rose. Give him a second. Is Jenny frozen to you guys? Can you see me? Am I moving freely?
What are you asking?
All right. So Vinny's frozen.
Yep.
Okay.
Vinny's frozen.
Vinny is. Yeah, it's cold up here, man. That must be why. All right. All right. So mine's going to be this. Mine's going to be like, well, we got a lot of work to do. Kim, please definitely come back more often than not. Maybe we'll talk after the show or something. We definitely need somebody on board like you, especially after just losing Carrie. I don't know if you knew or not, but our girl Carrie passed away. We don't know what went on. It was very sudden, so we definitely avoid to go with her being gone. But our prayers out to her family and all that stuff. And you know what, guys? Let's get to work on this stuff. Let's figure out a way that we can break this thing wide open and we can get all these kids home for everybody, not just ourselves. But I feel like it's coming. We just gotta get to it. So that all being said, I'm the CPS Punisher. We are, as soon as I can get the thing to this button, we are.
Have a nice evening, Kim.
Peace out, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
We'll see Kim again. We're definitely
Okay.
going to see more of Kim.
All right, I'm back. Sorry.
The world getting crazy,
Tablet
baby.
decided
Chill.
it wanted
Don't
to
medicate,
die.
just meditate. You waking up now, well, babe, you hella late.
So
Educate.
I just
What's
wanted to
going on?
say, I hope you parents keep fighting. Don't give up. You do have rights. And don't let CPS in your door without a warrant or a court order.
Perfect. All right, guys. All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your Christmas. I'm the CPS Punisher. Now I'm really out of here.
Let it resonate, accelerate. Find your inner hunger like you never ate. Agenda is to push the hate, separate and segregate. Don't celebrate quite yet, the storm is coming. Cue for heaven's sake. Violence that they demonstrate, instigate and penetrate. The values of our country and our God is what they desecrate. My fighters ain't no featherweight, pulling out the seams of the fabric that they fabricate. They feed us lies, manipulate, intimidate through fear and force. forcing us to sit and wait till we come together, congregate, and then we liberate. Praying that you give me strength to find some love amongst the hate. Marching on these streets of blood till I see the golden gates. Troubadour and troubled souls, one of God's servants. Blades out, cut the grass till we see the serpents.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
I know the truth is hard to swallow, just digest it. Suspected something's going on, but chose to just neglect it. Deflected by some breaking news, oh, we just accepted. Expected just to fall in line and follow their perspective. Don't question their objective, but I got a lot of questions. How these kids molested, but nobody's been arrested. Read it in the testament, these children are protected. So I'm fighting all these terrorists, both foreign and domestic. Refuse to be directed, blind, not a sheep. Only kneel to my God, so I'm dying on my feet. Silence when we speak, but there's violence in the street. I've been rolling with the punches, I can't take it on the cheap. Drink from a glass half full, I'm optimistic. People are sadistic, so vicious and malicious. Praying for assistance to overcome opposition, or I'm gonna start resisting and then I'll pray for forgiveness.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now. We need you now. We need you now. One day, one day, one day. Oh, one day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Imagine being a child who has been torn away from their security blanket, their parents, the ones who stopped the boogeyman from terrorizing the nights and curing their boo-boos when they scraped their knees. Now just imagine how they mightst feel when the CPS meant to protect them tears them away from their supposed abusers and places them with strangers who have zero comforting skills. They need to be calm. They are confused, lost, panicked, and needing their parents, but CPS took them away for the purpose of saving them. The kids don't even know why, and they are told that the parents they attach to no longer want them. What do you think that does? Do you think that this is how protecting children is supposed to look? Abolish CPS.